Very much, Lascan Corla, and thank you to Deputy Boyd Barrett and his colleagues for bringing forward this bill. I don't question at all the motives or your bona fides in this matter, and we've debated and discussed it, and I think I'll go through the matters within your bill. But I just want to say at the outset, and I think it was very clear yesterday as well, is that we are considering the legal and policy issues right now. We haven't just started doing that in any extension of the eviction ban and the eviction ban period. And it is complex, and I think you have to look at the context as well, that since 2016, 14% of tenancies, private tenancies, have been lost, are gone, 44,000 in total. That's a very serious issue, and we've got to look at why that is happening. We are actually in the process of carrying out a full review of the rental sector, a really deep dive in that space, because whether some like it or not, and I'm a firm believer in provision of social housing, and I'll turn to that momentarily, we also need a functioning private rental sector. And you do have to genuinely make sure that measures that are taken don't lead to further flight and reduction in stock and in housing capacity in that space, as we're building up the stock on the other side, and that is important. I'll deal with supply now in a moment, but no decision, Deputy Boyd Barrett, has been made, and the Cabinet will discuss the issues involved and reach a final decision in the coming weeks. And we'll do that in a very responsible way, and we'll do that based on legal advice as well. I'm a TD as well in Dublin Fingal. I meet people all the time in my own constituency, and indeed right across the country, people who are struggling in the private rental market. And this isn't a new phenomenon, and it is a very difficult issue to grapple with. And I know the difficulties, like Heather and other people, and I welcome Heather here today, are actually facing. The fundamental solution to this is to increase the supply and delivery of social homes, of private homes, of affordable homes. And you don't do that in 1 year of a plan. But we are making progress, and whilst Deputy Breed-Smith may not want to hear that, that's okay, but I will outline some of the progress that has been made. Is it enough? No, it's not. Do we need to scale it up? Yes, we do, and we need to make sure that we continue protections for tenants that are in place. So we are engaging, and right now, in detailed discussions with the Office of the Attorney-General on the legal considerations of such an extension. And these discussions, as I said just earlier, will inform any Cabinet decision that will be made on the matter. But it is very important to note also that there's no cliff edge on the eviction moratorium period. So it doesn't just end on the 31st of March, the current law that is in place. It's been deliberately designed to avoid a sudden removal in these emergency protections. And the ban is currently constructed will be lifted on a phased basis until about the 18th of June. So there isn't a cliff edge in that space. In relation to your own bill, and I have looked through it, and I just want to highlight a couple of matters within it. As it's currently drafted, there are some significant difficulties with it, and this isn't by way of a criticism, this is just by way of my reading of the bill and our consideration of the bill. Unlike the current winter eviction ban, there's no graduated time for notice to quit already served to fall effective, which could mean a significant number falling due on the same date whenever this proposed emergency period ends, which is 12 months after it should your bill pass. And this would ultimately create a cliff edge, and a very significant one, which could potentially overwhelm services. So it's not designed as the current law is. So it does, your own bill, have a very significant cliff edge at the end. It doesn't allow for termination in cases of overcrowding of rental property. This is a very difficult one as well, and we've seen, you've raised it as well here, where we have, rightly so through local authority inspections, where properties have been deemed unfit, and where those properties have been closed and tenants have had to be moved out, and that's a safety measure that's there. Fundamentally, that's to protect the tenant. And within your own bill, you don't allow for termination in cases of overcrowding. Landlords must comply with local authority directions where overcrowding may pose a fire hazard or a health and safety risk. And we've seen, unfortunately, some cases of that in the media. And it is a difficult one to decide, but fundamentally people's safety and their health is critically important. So again, you don't allow for termination of cases of overcrowding. The current eviction ban has been carefully calibrated to limit the interference on constitutional property rights. And why is that being done? That's not taking one side or the other. That's actually trying to make sure that any law that we bring forward isn't subject to a challenge, or wouldn't lose a challenge, more importantly. Anything that we pass here could potentially be subject to a challenge, but you want to make sure that the legislation that we pass and bring forward is robust enough to stand up to that challenge. And unlike this proposed bill, protections are not extended to former tenants who are overholding, remain in occupancy of a property despite their former tenancy being lawfully terminated with a termination date prior to the winter emergency period. And I understand what you're saying, but I think that that is a very legal weakness within the legislation that you've put forward. That could be subject to a successful challenge in that space. So, in contrast to this proposed bill, the issuing of notice to quits is allowed to continue under the current winter eviction ban, and this allows for a flow of tenancy terminations to continue after the relevant deferred termination date. There's no obstacle to tenants choosing to leave their tenancy during the winter months if a tenant is in a position to reaccommodate their households. Now, I do want to cover a couple of things specifically that relates to your bill, but in general terms, it is important to note that supply is up significantly. And I want to talk to you about social housing. And in the coming weeks, when we have the final returns in 2022, we will have delivered more new social homes, new build social homes, yes, through AHBs and local authorities, because they're all social homes and I don't make a distinction between them, than we've done since probably 1975. And we will have built 10,000 more homes overall in 2022 than we did in 2021. Affordable homes for the first time in about 15 years, affordable homes for purchase, cost rental homes. And yes, Deputy, the LDA has delivered homes last year. I would remind you as well that in relation to delivery of homes on state-owned land, the Land Development Agency is the agency to do that. And you did, and it's your right, you opposed that. You opposed the LDA legislation, okay? You voted against it. So you voted against its capitalisation, and you voted against the standing up of the agency. In relation to cost rental, and we have a national cost rental scheme now in place, and that was underpinned by the Affordable Housing Act. You voted against the Affordable Housing Act. You voted against the Affordable Housing Act that gives not just cost rental and a national cost rental scheme that we want to scale up even further, and we will do. We'll have more cost rental tenancies this year than we had last, but also things that Deputy Breed Smith mentioned, like the First Home Scheme. That's over 1,000 approvals issued to real families, real people, who many of them who are caught in a rental trap, who are now able to buy their new home, a safe and secure home for them at an affordable rate. Not a second mortgage, as some have said, an equity by the state, real help and assistance, again underpinned by the Affordable Housing Act that you actually opposed and you voted against. And that's fine, and that's your right to do so. But when you come in and complain about lack of affordability where we're making progress, you should also state that you've actually opposed the measures that have been brought forward. The vacancy grants that we brought forward, Croí vacancy grants, over 1,000 applications so far, to actually help people buy those properties and bring them into use. And has been incredible interest in it. And again, many of those people who are taking those vacant homes back into use across towns, villages, cities and rural areas in this country are people who've been renting and now have a safe, secure home. In relation to public housing stock, since 2022, we've brought back over 8,500 vacant social homes back into use. And to bring in a proper management system to manage our local authority stock better, to particularly focus at our seniors, which is very important because there's been a lack of appropriate housing delivery for seniors, particularly in social housing, but particularly those who are above the social housing thresholds also, and which, Deputy, as you will know, has significantly increased the social housing thresholds just this year. And that was the first significant change in social housing income limits since 2011. So we've done that also in relation to emergency planning and actually being able to deliver new social and new affordable homes on state-owned, council-owned land that's already zoned to deliver it, to speed up that process. We've removed the debt on those sites and we brought in emergency planning powers. We brought a bill into this House, Deputy, and you and Deputy Smith and your colleagues will know how you voted on that. You opposed that as well. So on the one side you say you want extra supply and we bring forward measures to do, you vote against it. You want affordable housing, you vote against it. Okay? Now, what I will say is there is an issue, certainly, and I've discussed this with you directly. I'll conclude on this, Akihiri. Discuss this with you directly in relation to people who are above the social housing limits whose landlord is selling. And I am looking at measures that I'm working through that and what potentially could be brought forward. But the state cannot buy every property either. And it has to be criteria within that too.
Thank you.
And I think you understand that.
Thank you, Minister.